Please call roll.
Councillor Shaw,
Here.
Councillor Singh,
Here.
Councillor Wolf,
Here.
Council President Hu,
Here.
Mayor Lube,
Here.
Youth Councillor Nog.
Here. If everyone would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. City Council or staff, any non-agenda items today?
None for us, but I do have one item I'd like to mention. It's a consent item 4C, which is the guaranteed maximum price contract amendment. We're recommending that we pull that from this agenda and move it to our May 9th meeting, and we also will bring a Q3 supplement at that time. So recommend that you remove item 4C.
Okay. Any conversation or concern about moving that agenda item? No. Okay. Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the City Councilors, we would just like to congratulate you on your State of the City address yesterday and congratulate teammates for a wonderful program. I really enjoy the food, the dancer, and just the whole thing. And yeah, so really congratulations. It's a milestone for the city to have the first female mayor giving the State of the City address, so congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being a part of it. It was such a wonderful event. I was saying earlier, I think about half the crowd were individuals that I've never seen at any sort of city function. It's a testament to a different kind of mayor and I think a different kind of council and people feeling as though they're represented in the council and they want to participate. So I think also kudos to everyone is appropriate. So thank you. I also want to add that there's just a couple of proclamations I'd like to announce after the award if I were mayor. That's the only change I'll make. I won't be reading them entirely. I just want to announce a few of them. Okay. So we will move on to the second item on our agenda, which is to award the 2023 If I Were Mayor Student Contest Prizes. And we have Executive Assistant Bankston here to introduce this item. Welcome.
Hello.
Yep.
Hi, Council. This is the first time I've gotten to come to you guys. Hey, I have the distinct pleasure of announcing or introducing our winning students. This is the 12th year that the city has participated in the Oregon Mayors Association contest, and both our students have had their artwork and essay sent to Salem where they're going to compete in the statewide contest, and they can win up to $500 for their entry. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But our first winner is Sage Rydberg, who did our poster contest.
Yeah, and I'd like to welcome Sage to come up so we can present you with your gift card and a little gift that Joanne put together.
Thank you for this award. I'm really glad to have competed in this, and I'm really thankful for my teacher who introduced me to this, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. The other winner we have is for the middle school essay contest, and we have 7th grader Adam El Taib here.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thanks.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Being able to read through them and choose is so difficult and so hard, but so many wonderful ideas were expressed, and you both should be just so proud of yourselves for your ideas and suggestions, and I really look forward to seeing what you're going to do with them in the future. Okay, next item on our agenda is I'm just going to read a couple of proclamations. The first is Vietnamese Remembrance Day on April 30th. I am proclaiming Global Love Day on May 1st. And May 2023 is Jewish American Heritage Month. More proclamations to come. Okay. Item number 3 on our agenda is public comment. The call-in number is 503-966-4101, and those wishing to comment should call now to get in the queue. Anyone present wanting to comment should sign up at the public comment form at the front of the room. And we have Assistant City Manager Nyland who will report on follow-up to previous public comment. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? Just doing another test.
Yes.
So at last week's council meeting, we did not receive any written testimony, and we did not have anyone call in or reach us by video. We did, however, have someone provide comments in person. So that community member asked some questions specifically about Universal Plaza and also about the police department facilities. I did speak with him after his comments and also followed up with an email providing him some information about outreach and engagement and how to interact with the mayor and council and how he can learn more about issues like facilities. I'll continue to provide him updates as he was new to this process. So I'd like to take a moment to present some fun facts for you. You all had a very busy 72 hours. On Saturday, you actively participated as members of the Budget Committee, and last night you all attended the State of the City event. So some fun facts about that event. 228 people attended. 21 children took part in the children's activities that were provided. 288 people watched the event live or on the replay on social media. And important to note, the audio worked perfectly during the live stream. So wanted to let Councilor Wolf know that people heard you and we'll continue to push that link out. The speech was over 100 paragraphs, consisting over 366 lines, and more than 3,100 words were spoken and delivered by Mayor Lube. Poop was mentioned once in the speech. That's worth noting.
I will say that was off the cuff, right? Should I add that you did not know that that comment was coming?
If you saw my full expression, you would have known. So 174 tree saplings were distributed, helping us achieve our goal of a healthy tree canopy. And an unlimited amount of gratitude extended to you, the mayor, council, and the team for all of the work to make last night such a success. It was a perfect combination of entertainment, information, and inspiration. That is my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those fun facts. We did not receive any written comments today. And so in person, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No one signed up to speak.
Okay. Network Administrator Cleary, are there any phone callers in the queue or any requests to comment by video this evening?
We have no phone nor video testimony today.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda is used for routine items including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. As noted previously, item C is being moved to the May 9th meeting and is no longer part of this consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments? Or a motion?
So I'm assuming it is still modified because it was on the agenda. So I move to approve the consent agenda as modified.
Perfect.
I'll second the motion.
The move has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous consent of the council. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the Tigard Youth Advisory Council bylaws. Management analyst, speaking today, Richardson and TIAC President Rachel Wu will present this item. Welcome, come on up.
Hello, Council and Mayor. Thank you for having us. I am Alex Richardson, Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office.
Hi, I'm Rachel Wu, President of Tigard Youth Advisory Council.
So you all received updated bylaws for the Tigard Youth Advisory Council, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to just kind of give a high-level overview of what some of those changes are. So just as a little bit of background, TIAC, as many of you know, Tigard Youth Advisory Council was formed in 2003. And their bylaws were last revised in 2015, so 8 years ago. And there were a few different reasons that we wanted to take a look at the bylaws. One was just to make sure that they reflect who TIAC is now. There was a little bit of a dip in membership during COVID, as all meetings had to be virtual, as was the case for many of our boards, committees, and other city groups. And so when we went into this past year and you all appointed and accepted a lot of new members, we wanted to make sure that those members felt that their, kind of evolving vision for TIAC and some of the specifics were really reflected in the current bylaws. So this was actually part of our strategic planning process. We spent several sessions going through not only the bylaws, but kind of talking about everything from meeting format to events that the youth participate in and help lead, all sorts of things. And so the bylaws were just one piece of that. Just to give a quick overview of the strategic planning, some of the things we talked about were potentially picking a nonprofit to support next year, focusing on increasing middle school membership, strengthening the connection between TIAC and to council, doing more advocacy, the Main Street adoption and cleanup schedule, and then strengthening connections to other youth councils in the area. So we've kind of started making progress toward all of those, and I look forward to updating you on those at future council sessions. But as for some of the changes, I won't go through every single one, but I will just go through some of the things that I think are most notable. And of course, I welcome any questions at any point. And then for a couple, I'll let our president, Rachel, kind of fill in some of the detail. So one of the first things that we wanted to do, and I'll let Rachel speak to this if she would like, is to, the bylaws previously stated that the TIAC members could be those who attend schools around Washington County. Well, we wanted to specify that they could be TTSD students or they could be residents of Tigard. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
We thought that change was really important, as there were people in our community that worried about participating in our city events if they didn't live within the city, but they participated in all of our school activities. And a lot of our friends were in that same boat, and so opening it up to Tigard citizens and also the TTSD students would make it more welcoming for all of them.
Thank you. Some of these other changes too that are a little bit more technical in nature, I worked with both City Attorney Shelby Rahala and Senior Management Analyst Nicole Hendricks to kind of true up some of the specifics in the bylaws to reflect those in all of our other board and committee bylaws. Some of the language, for example, members are encouraged to apply for other city boards and committees as a change instead of serve as ex officio members of city boards and commissions. Also, that TIAC members are encouraged to volunteer and participate in the Tigard community, and that they may individually represent the youth voice. And what it previously said was a little bit more along the lines of that TIAC could represent TIAC kind of in to businesses, to local organizations. And so working with City Attorney Rahala, we just wanted to make that a little bit more clear that it's actually a representation of their individual voice rather than of TIAC, unless there's a vote through TIAC and approval of that ahead of time. I think one of the next major changes that we'd like to talk about are the officer positions. So we went from 4 officers to 5, and they were reorganized a little bit. So if you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so we kept the president, vice president, we have our treasurer, but I think the most important change that we added was our school outreach officer. So since changing the membership to TTSD, school students were allowed to, we thought it was important to reach out to those schools and give them opportunity and awareness of what the youth council was. And if we wanted to partner with the school or any school clubs with those events, we would have an officer who was already in contact with them, and it'd be a lot smoother, a lot quicker, and the communication would just flow better.
Thanks, Rachel. Another technical change that we felt was important was removing some of the gendered language. I know many of the other boards and committees have done that, and we felt that that was important to be more inclusive. And then something else of note is about attendance and contacting members. That would be found in section 6 if you're following along. Let you speak to that one.
The major changes is that we will now contact any members who have not shown up at least twice to give them a notice before removing them from our roster.
And that removal would only be done with vote from TIAC, of course. But the 3 or more times, that's pretty standard. I did a pretty thorough comparison of all of our board and committee bylaws. 3 unexcused absences is sort of the minimum, and it goes up from there depending on the board or committee. So we wanted to leave that in, but just make sure that we were giving folks an adequate notice and make sure that that was actually in writing in our bylaws. So that was another change. And then I think finally the only other one worth pointing out here is there had kind of been an error in the last revision in 2015. There was a line in section 7 quorum that said that excused absent members shall be counted as present in regards to the quorum. So I think what that actually was a misinterpretation. Drawing from other board and committee bylaws, I think that what happened is that folks assumed that if somebody was going to abstain from voting on a particular issue, that they were excusing themselves from that. It was interpreted to be sort of their absence is excused, but they might still be counted for quorum. So we just clarified that to say you must be present to vote. Basically, that's what that is saying. So the number that must be there to be considered part of quorum, so the majority, so more than half, that was not changed. We just struck that line about excused absent members should be counted as present in regards to the quorum. So those are some of the changes, and then I'll just mention 2 other quick things before I open it up for any questions or comments. It was suggested by Council President Hu to remove some of the shall, to remove all of the shalls. So that is something that I'll do after this meeting. I kind of wanted to capture all edits here. And I'll replace all of the shalls with will, just to keep consistency with our other board and committee bylaws and some of our other documents, resolutions, I believe, some other areas that we have made that change. And then Councillor Wolf had suggested adding an age range. So instead of grades 6 through 12 students that could be members of TIAC, that we would also add an age range, like potentially 11 to 19. So I don't know if there are any opinions or feelings on that, but definitely something I wanted to also talk to the officers about before we make that official edit. So that's kind of what I have so far for edits on top of what you've received tonight. So yeah, we'd love to entertain any discussion or questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. Questions? Yeah. Councillor Wolf.
I just want to make a quick comment. I thought you all did a very thoughtful job, thought about, the officers that could impact the work you do in connecting with schools. And so I just appreciate the thoughtfulness to bring them kind of to life of the work that's happening now. So thank you very much. Great work.
Thanks, Councillor Wolf.
Councillor Wolf, or Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I ditto the same and appreciate the update since 2015 because a lot's changed since then. One quick note, and I didn't get a chance to send an email, so I apologize, but on the first page under Section 1C, Bullet 6, it says members are encouraged to apply for other city boards and committees. And then on, it would be Section 6, B, the first bullet says that each member of the Youth Advisory Council shall serve on a minimum of 1 committee or subcommittee. So I just wonder if you wanted to align those. So I had some suggested language that I'm happy to send if that's something you're interested in. But that was my only comment, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Shaw. Yeah, I believe, and I guess I'd have to kind of read this over more thoroughly, but I believe that that second piece was referring to TIAC subcommittees, and the first piece was referring to other city boards and committees, potentially, if that seems like that makes sense. We do have one member of TIAC right now, Zach Fairmont, is that his last name? Claremont, and he's on the Charter Review Committee. So I know typically, too, that you, of course, you can't serve on more than one board or committee at one time unless one of them is non-standing. So we wanted to encourage members to serve as encourage members to serve as members of other boards and committees, but that they should serve on subcommittees within TIAC. So I think that that's what that refers to, but I'll do a thorough read through again and make sure. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I'll just say when I was reading, that's how I interpret it, because the first part says city boards and committees, and then the other part I think is specifically talking about TIAC. So,
okay.
Are you, because I know that there are some potential changes as far as the age, are you at this point right now looking for guidance and come back for changes all at one time, or would you like to make some changes now and some changes later? Looking for guidance on your request.
I think we could make that change now if that's okay, and then if it's acceptable to vote on to have the resolution be for approving edited bylaws that incorporate the edits that we decide on tonight. Otherwise, I'd be happy to come back again before council with the revised copy.
Shelby, do you have a preference?
It's whatever works for council.
Okay. Councilor Wolf?
I don't think that any of the proposed changes are really substantial to the shift of the intent. So I think we should just move to approve. Guess I got to find my spot because I was just going to segue right into it. The Tigard Youth Council Resolution 2310 as modified.
Okay.
I second. Nope.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, will the city recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution number 23-10, a resolution amending the Tigard Youth Advisory Council bylaws.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Resolution 23-10 is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Congratulations. Thank you for suggesting those changes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the Tigard Youth Advisory Council National League of Cities Conference Review.
So I'll just give a quick intro, and then you guys can come up now, and then I'll let Natalia and Sarah take it away. Okay, so here, I'll do this. Go ahead and take a seat. So Sarah Berg is our media/marketing officer, and Natalia Jaquez is our treasurer. They, along with Youth Councilor Oishiki Nog, did go with me to Washington, D.C. with all of you here, and we had a wonderful time, and we spent a lot of time with you all. So a lot of this will kind of be a review, but in keeping with the tradition of having a nice presentation afterwards for posterity's sake and just to kind of celebrate the success, we wanted to go ahead and do this, this quick review. So I will let them take it away, and thank you very much.
If you want to introduce yourselves so everyone knows who you are, that would be great.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah Berg. I am a senior at Tigard High School. Just came from a track meet, so I apologize for the attire. And yeah, I really enjoyed being able to go to NLC with all of you. We got to do a lot of networking, a lot of meeting new people, and it was such a really valuable and great experience.
Hello, I'm Natalia Hawkins. I'm a senior at Tualatin High School, and this was really an amazing experience. I was looking forward to this since 7th grade when I first joined TIAC. I remember hearing about some of the people who went at that point. And so I feel really lucky that we got approved and we got funding for this year, and very, very grateful. It was an incredible experience.
Okay, I'm Oishiki Nog. I am a senior at Tigard High, and I am so lucky and incredibly grateful to go for a second year. I was able to use a lot of my experience from last year to continue building and networking, as well as continue securing those relationships with past youth advisory boards and councils to just check in again. I was also able to talk to our elected representatives about certain things that youth are very passionate about that I will elaborate on. Okay, so one of the things that I really appreciate this year was that there were a lot more youth sessions that were targeted towards specific objectives. For example, one of the ones that I personally really liked was the one where we talked about transportation. And I think especially since we're coming from Tigard, transportation and road safety is really big because Hall has oftentimes not been the safest place, especially for school children and those that are trying to walk to school, especially in that like little chunk in Metzger where there is no sidewalks. So it was really interesting to see the perspective of national leaders on that and seeing just how impactful youth voices can be in the fight for road safety. Another one that's shown in the pictures is many young leaders were able to run their own campaigns and learn about elections and campaign running and to lead their own mayoral campaign to be LA's mayor. I was one of the candidates. I unfortunately did not get voted in, but I was able to reflect a lot of Tigard's policies for houselessness. And I talked about TIF zoning districts that nobody else understood what they were. And they were like, wow, I don't know what that is. I think I might have lost people in the technicalities of it. But yeah, it was an amazing experience, and the youth sessions were amazing. Do you guys have anything to add about your favorites?
I have a little bit. I was going to say it was really incredible to meet other people from across the country, really a wide variety of people there, and getting to know what worked well for their councils, and so getting to speak with them and get new ideas for ours, and also maybe what didn't work well for their councils in regards to attendance or the loss of membership over COVID, and it was nice to know that we were all kind of together in that at least, so.
Okay, so another thing, which you guys were all there for these as well, that we participated in, was the general conference sessions. I think that was personally one of my favorite parts of the conference, just because there was such a variety of topics that were talked about, and we got to see what was going on not only in Oregon, which we often hear about, whether that be on our news or we read about or come to city council to learn about. We got to learn about what's happening in other states across the country, and so I think that was a very valuable experience. Getting to hear from the First Lady was also pretty cool, so I can't complain about that. Overall, I just think the general sessions were a really great opportunity to learn what's going on and to kind of see what we can apply to Tigard, because as we know, each state is very different, but there's still little things we can pull from all people throughout the country. So,
yeah. And then we also got the chance to go sightseeing and walk around Washington, D.C. a little bit. While our time was limited, we did definitely make the most of it. We got ice cream. That was very good. And we also, yeah, we got to see the, I'm blanking on all of the names, the African American History Museum at the Smithsonian, Lincoln Memorial. We also got to enjoy the beautiful cherry blossoms, which were at their peak, and that was awesome. And walk around the Capitol a little bit at night. And so we definitely made the most of our time there.
just to add to that too, we got to see the Supreme Court, and that was like probably one of the coolest experiences of my life. I could stand there and stare at it all day. So in the limited time we had, it was definitely really cool.
Yes, and just Tigard representing, we gave one of the Capitol Police Guards a Tigard pin, and I think that made her day. And what's the other thing I was going to talk about? Oh no. Yeah, we actually did give out a lot of Tigard pins to a lot of DC civilians. We told them that if they ever visited, they had a friend in Tigard, so hopefully they'll come. But just to contribute back, we are all certified cherry blossom protectors. So,
yes, we got our park ranger certification in that through a little activity. It was fun. And then do you want to speak on Hill Day?
Oh, yeah. So, Hill Day, it started off with a very monumental occasion because a squirrel attacked Natalia. But, I mean, we all walked over there and we all had a moment to talk and ask questions to our representatives. I had a chance to talk to Representative Hoyle. Sarah had a chance to talk to Representative Salinas. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, but there was a staffer who was very willing to listen to us and take notes. We were able to listen to a lot of the priorities that the Oregon League of Cities had on a national level, and just to see what some of these federal bills that we were pushing to get support for, just to see how some of the background momentum, I guess. And we also got to talk to Senator Jeff Merkley about our own questions, and we got to take some pictures, and it was a great moment for all of us to kind of network with one another and just to see some of the youth-led perspectives and priorities for federal policy.
I will say it was very inspiring to see all the youth and their questions in that room. I forget from what council he was, but there was another youth delegate there that had a really good question, and so it was really interesting to see where youth priorities lie and people advocating for them. So.
Thank you. No, but really it wouldn't have been possible for all of this to happen without you guys, and being able to get to know all of you guys was really so amazing, and I'm so thankful that we had this opportunity, and I'm sad that I won't be on the youth council next year, but it's been such a great experience, and I'm so thankful to all of you and everybody in the city who made this possible for us.
Thank you so much for being here. Oh, are you?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. This was a really incredible experience, and something that I will definitely carry with me for a while. It made this career path feel very accessible in a way that I never really thought it was before, and it opened up a lot of opportunities and really motivated me to make a change. And so I just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge those things and add on to it. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, the position that I have is very unique and one that not many city councils have at all. So just being able to talk to people and emphasize the importance of youth voice in a more formal level was really important for me, especially since a lot of cities and counties across the country are trying to limit youth power and youth voice. So a lot of people were surprised as to how much Tigard really cares about youth empowerment and civic engagement. So thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I think it was incredible having the three of you there. You were energetic. I think when the older people, adults, were we technically adults, dragged a little, and your energy was just infectious. I really loved during Hill Day, we adults in the room, electeds, were sort of prescribed our questions or comments that we were supposed to have with our elected officials, but the youth were given free rein to ask whatever questions they wanted. And I promise you, nobody got off easy in that room when the youth were asking questions. And I think the individual that Natalia was speaking about, it was a contentious conversation that actually happened between their representative and themselves, and they didn't back down from it. And it was incredible to see the youth that we have here in Tigard and here in Oregon really standing up for what they believe in, for being excited to be there. I know firsthand, I went to DC as a sophomore, and from then I've been absolutely in love with the city. So I know the way that trip can change you, and I'm just so excited you were there. And please know that you should be incredibly proud of yourself, the way that you represented Tigard, and it was a joy to get to know you and to see what you did during that week, those couple of days. Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
I was just a little disappointed the squirrel picture wasn't included.
Oh, it was.
Was it there?
Yeah.
Oh, I
no,
didn't see it. I saw it on the online version, but I didn't see it there. Well, if you didn't get a chance to see the very small squirrel, take a look because it's
Thank you so much for being here tonight and presenting to us. Yeah, that squirrel was everywhere. Yep.
Thank you guys so much.
I'm just going to hop on really quick.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Please do.
And say that they were incredible just to go on this trip with. It was so fun getting to know them. And again, thank you from me to all of you for supporting that, as well as City Manager Reimer, Nicole Hendricks, Joanne Bengtson. I feel like I'm in an awards ceremony. All of the city teammates that supported all of us to get to go this year. It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Safe Routes to School and Tigard-Tualatin School District IGA. And we have Program Coordinator Brockelshin? Yes. Thank you. I am German, so I was hoping that I pronounced it correctly. Thank you for being here to present this item.
Thank you, and I'm excited to follow a great group of Tigard and Tualatin leaders. Good evening, Mayor Lube and City Councilors. My name is Hendrik Brockelshin. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator at the City of Tigard. And tonight I'm seeking a council resolution for City Manager Reimer to sign the City of Tigard and Tigard-Tualatin School District Safe Routes to School Intergovernmental Agreement. And because that's a mouthful, I'll just call that the IGA moving forward. And I do want to also acknowledge that we have some supporters in the room. We have the superintendent, Dr. Sue Reekie-Smith, and Tracy Rose, who's the Director of Communications and Community Relations at Tigard-Tualatin School District. Also, Dave Roth, the City of Tigard Senior Transportation Planner, is virtually joining us. Oh. And now he's behind us. So. Great, so I will jump in and start to share a little bit about how the IGA came about and what value it brings to the City of Tigard and the Tigard-Tualatin School District. So in front of you, you see the 5 overarching Safe Routes to School tasks and how they are aligned with the multitude of the City of Tigard policies, plans, and strategies. So specifically, I want to highlight the strategic vision, which is an equitable community that is walkable, healthy, and accessible for everyone. The City Council goals to address climate change and to enhance community safety and accessibility, and a number of our 2040 Transportation System Plan goals, notably to provide a safe, comfortable, and connected transportation system for all users, especially pedestrians and vulnerable users. The next 3 slides are going to paint a little picture of what the program has been doing for the past few years, and they'll highlight successes, but also areas where I believe the program can grow. And so in front of you, you see our walk and roll participation from 2016 to just last year. And there's that dip to 0, which we probably all recognize as the COVID pandemic. And so we didn't have any programs in our schools during that time. And since then, you can see that the numbers have continued to go up and even to breaking records in 2022. I also want to highlight we just started our first winter walk and roll to school challenge, which is new for us. And although it didn't smash any records, we did have 5 schools participate, which I think was a great success. And in front of you, you see a few photos from our 2nd grade pedestrian and scooter education. They're included because they're great photos, and also to show that we are reaching quite a number of students. And in our education programs, which also includes our 5th grade bike safety, we reached just over 600 students last year. We're looking to break 700 this year. And although that's a success, it also highlights one of the limiting factors in that there's only one Safe Routes to School coordinator serving all of these schools. And so there's a great opportunity in partnering with Tigard-Tualatin School District to find ways to strengthen the program, bolster our numbers, and reach a greater number of students. So here we have our goal, our partnership, and our process, and I'll expand on those. So a goal, which is to grow the Safe Routes to School program and adopt more programs, will be served by working together closely to find ways to transition some of the responsibilities that I currently hold. For example, teaching our second grade pedestrian and scooter education. We would love to see if there's an opportunity to bring some of those responsibilities to perhaps PE teachers or other school members, which would include a training by myself and some of our great resources like our scooter fleet. And the IGA it spells out a way that we can start working together to explore some great opportunities like that. And for partnership, we talk about shared challenges and better solutions when we work together. So for our walk and roll challenges, since I started 2 years ago, I continue to get more and more support from Tigard Tualatin School District as I also grow my relationships with members from each school and the administration. And that support, as you saw previously, has shown a grow in our walk and roll numbers. And we also want to start working on different things, such as how do we address challenges like traffic around schools? Can we work together to find better ways to do circulation? A new thing would be e-bikes and e-scooters. How do we start to work together to acknowledge the benefits, but also realize that there's some challenges with those things? And the process we included here to highlight that this was a well thought out process, which included the most effective and important stakeholders. So myself, Dave Roth, and these representatives from TTSD, including operations, finance, communications, facilities, and transportation, met 3 times to put together this document. And we're also excited to put this in front of you to get your input and hopefully approval.
Thank you.
And I'll turn that over to you all if you have any questions or comments.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you very much. And I get to sit on the Transportation Advisory Committee, and you had a wonderful presentation with a lot more pictures just showing the robustness of this program, particularly with the scooters and the bikes. So I just want to say thank you, and maybe one day we can clone you and we can have a lot more activities, but just want to say thank you very much.
Council President Hu?
I also want to echoing on that sentiment. I saw you in action teaching school kids how to be safe on the road, so I was very impressed, so thank you so much. And I think we did some exchange back and forth about making the purpose section a little bit more inclusive, so that's my understanding. That's going to be language is going to be made, yeah. So should I be more explicit about what needs to be changed?
Yes,
okay,
please.
So in the purpose section, it was said the party will partner to deliver a SRTS program ensuring safe pedestrian, scooter, and bike education is provided to students of all economic levels. Yeah, all economic level. And I think we're just going to change all economic levels to all backgrounds, so it's more inclusive. So.
Yeah, and that aligns with our goals to working with TTSD to be, inclusive to all students, and we do that through a variety of different ways.
Yeah, Youth Councillor Nag.
Okay, I just want a clarifying question from my childhood. So Scooter Town from Durham Elementary, was this part of the program? Because it reminds me a lot of kind of like the scooter stations. So was Scooter Town like...
Do you mean Safety Town?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know if it's Scooter Safety Town, but I just remember it wasn't the most safe thing as a kid, because I remember a lot of kids were like ramming into each other on scooters, but I think I think maybe, yeah, Scooter Safety Town, but it was just called Scooter Town.
Well, I'll admit I didn't grow up here, so I didn't have that component in my childhood, and I will have to admit kids still run into each other on the scooters. That said, the scooter and pedestrian education is more focused on teaching some safe skills, like making a plan before you leave your home, how to find the best places to cross the street, and then also how to scooter safely, use hand signals, and be as responsible as a second grader can be while scootering and having fun.
I think this is such a wonderful program, and it's so valuable, even seeing you at community events. And, you know, I love when people come up to you and you're like, do you need a bike helmet, right? Like, you know, and kids are like, what? They're just giving these things away? I mean, it's just a really great way to connect with the community and really talk about safety and different ways to get to school. I love walking rules to school. When I used to be in a different neighborhood and I could literally just walk right up and join everyone, and just the excitement you can hear from the kids who participate in that program. It brings such value to our community. So thank you for that. Are there any additional comments or a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 23-11 with the minor amendment noted.
I'll second the motion.
Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, will the city recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution 23-11, a resolution approving signature of City of Tigard and Tigard-Tualatin School District Safe Routes to School Intergovernmental Agreement as modified.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Resolution 23-11 passes by a unanimous vote of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the supporters in the room. Much appreciated.
Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have the police service levy discussion with Police Chief McAlpine and Commander McDonald. Welcome.
Mayor and council, I'm going to kick off this real quickly. We made a little change after you got your meeting guide. First, I want to thank both the chief and commander for being here, as well as other members of our department. This is the start of what we were envisioning as at least a two-part discussion with the city council. This is obviously an important topic that you talked about at your advance, and now we wanted to have the discussion at a deeper level. Tonight is intended to talk about, to review and discuss the history of the program and really the need to maintain our current police levels. And then on May 16th, which is the second item or second meeting scheduled, really looking at what are the policy considerations in front of the council to make sure that we have the direction we need to start down the path of the potential for a ballot measure. And so there's a lot of detail that we understand. So tonight was to really set the foundation to make sure all of you have a clear understanding of our current police services levy, and then garner the questions you have and the information that you need, and then come back in May with those policy considerations. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief and commander. Thanks.
Thank you, City Manager. Again, for the record, Chief Kathy McAlpine, and with me is Patrol Commander Jamie McDonald. And before I start, since I always seem to be the Eeyore of the group, whoever we follow, the future is bright for our women. I like that. But again, congratulations on last night's success, both mayor and council. And Councilor Hu, you rocked that vest, that traffic vest. And just if you didn't know, we're hiring. So think about it. All right, going on, we'll start with the first slide. To no surprise to all of you, where we're starting from is, again, during your recent goal setting, you set up the goal of enhanced community safety and accessibility. And this was listed to generate a revenue to support desired public safety services level. And in that, one of the actions is to pass a public safety levy. And again, as City Manager Reimer stated, it was important, since some of you inherited this, I felt it was important to just go back a little bit to how we got here and some of the critical decisions that have been made along the way. And again, I'd be remiss to say with the tremendous support of the community to even pass the first one. So I want to make sure I acknowledge that. Next slide, please. Okay, this is most of these slides, we're packing a lot of information into these slides, so bear with us a little bit, because some of these pictures do tell a story. And then you're going to hear the commander and I kind of tag team on this. But as you may know, we're divided in 5 districts. And that's been true for, I think we're trying to figure out maybe as far back as 20 years. At one time before there were 6 districts, but for modern history, 20 years, it's been 5 districts. However, we've seen a lot of changes in those districts. What's also true is in the last 25 years, what we call our minimum staffing levels have not changed. And when we say that, we're really talking about our patrol division and what we've identified as the minimum number of officers that we need to staff the street. Before we go below that, we would call somebody in on overtime. And we felt at that time those are the safety numbers. And you all know that our calls for service haven't kept up pace with our staffing. We've also seen significant growth, both in Tigard but also in Washington County in the area. You all know about coming out of COVID back to our traffic congestion. And one of the things this map shows is that if we do take somebody to jail, that takes us often sometimes as long as, depending on the time of day, maybe as much as an hour to go to Hillsborough, to the Washington County Jail, and then be able to come back. Also, if we are able to take anybody to the hospital for a police officer hold, that's somebody in a mental health crisis that needs us to attend, or they need to seek medical assistance before they're booked into the jail, those hospitals are not in Tigard either. And so that again takes us out of the city limits. Some of the other key points here is, again, what we've seen in the growth. To paint a picture, we've had 705 multifamily housing. Things like the Viewfinder, Overland, and Fields are all in District 1. So again, the density we have. River Terrace is in that District 3 that you see, that arm portion of that. And we're anticipating much more growth in the upcoming years. And when we went out for the levy, we were just trying to catch up to what we knew at that time. The other thing I'd like to kind of share with you, I didn't put it on this slide, but it does tell another story, is how our calls for service are distributed. Because our goal is to staff an officer in each of those districts. For a couple reasons. You want some continuity. You want to know who your officer is. They take ownership. We want to be able to respond quicker if we're geographically dispersed. Right now, District 1 has 38% of our calls for service. And again, that's your downtown core, your Tigard Triangle, some of the density that we've had is situated there. And that is our highest call volume for the last 5 years is in District 1. In 2, we have about 18% of our calls. In District 5 is 20%. That's where your Washington Square Mall and some of our other retail. In District 4, we have 14%. And still, even though District 3, which has all of the new growth of River Terrace, it is still only 10% of our calls for service at this time. And as you know, sitting through the budget committee, we've tried to address the District 1 by that focused patrol pilot program. Again, that officer would be situated downtown and along some of our Universal Plaza and the Rotary Plaza, but that'll also take the burden off of that solely one District 1 officer that has to kind of handle it all. So we're hoping to be able to come back with some successes in that. Next slide, please.
So on this slide, there's a lot of information to digest, so let me give a little bit of explanation. So on the bottom left there, you'll see where our dispatch calls for service were in 2011. And above that, the blue bar graph shows the full-time equivalents for the sworn police officers. So these are your police officers who would be in uniform. It also includes detectives, both our commercial crimes detectives, our general assignment detectives. So that's all of the sworn police officers. In the middle there, as you see the increase going up, an important thing to note is that we were a part of the Transit Police Division, TriMet's police team. And over time, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is hiring and retention and trying to hire new officers, we've recoiled back from that. And those positions were completely paid for by TriMet, but they were included in these numbers. So the city was reimbursed for our participation and actually paid for the administrative costs to be able to support those officers being down there as well. So it wasn't just the flat cost. The city actually recovered some of the costs for paying for instance, payroll to be process for those officers. But we have no one assigned to transit anymore. And so as you can see, as that graph goes across to the fiscal year 2019 and 20, we were at 69 officers, but the population had increased by 2020, and that number that's on there, the 54,520, is the census. Well, one of the census figures. You look and find multiple, but it was very close to that 54,500. And now the estimate that is commonly being used is just over 57,000 for current day. And then to the right of that line, the green line there indicates post-levy. So when the voters approved the levy in 2020, that increased the number of sworn officers, and we continue to see that, as we try to move through and address the needs that we have. The important thing there that you see the reduction is we had some of those additional reductions from transit police as we brought all of our officers back to the city, and those were taken out of the budget. So you're not seeing a reduction necessarily in officers on the street here in Tigard, but that's a reduction in how our participation was reflected with transit police. But then in the upper right-hand corner there, you'll notice that number of calls, dispatch calls for service has increased. And so you see that significant increase in the number of calls for service that Tigard is generating for a number of officers that is struggling to keep up with those types of things. Another thing that should be noted is that we implemented, in an effort to try and mitigate some of the workload for our officers, is an online reporting system. So often community members will call in, or they're reluctant to call in because they don't want to bother an officer because they have what they feel is a minimal crime, and they don't want to bother an officer with that. But the online reporting system provides a platform for someone to be able to get a case number for whatever they might need, be able to write that report, and give us the ability to have that data so we still know that a crime occurred. Because if we don't get called, we don't know that it occurred. That would have created an additional 800 reports for us. So even a higher number of calls for service. And we know intuitively that there's still a lot of people that don't take advantage of that when they may be able to. And like the chief said, even though you can see that line has gone up and down a little bit, our minimum staffing has not changed. With the passage of the levy, it is our intent to be able to do that, to up those minimum staffing levels. And one of the challenges that we face is recruiting and retention, but we'll talk about that a little bit more.
And I think Commander McDonald touched on it, but since the passage of the levy, and you see the number still going down, and how is that? We still kept the TriMet positions on the books. We weren't ready to totally close that door. So they showed consistently each budget cycle, and we would lower it down to, I think we have one, because it's just apparent with our current vacancies and the needs in the city of Tigard. As much as they're asking for all agencies to contribute, we're just not able to. So the decrease is really all about the budgeted TriMet positions on that one. And as we said, we look at this as a kind of a three-legged stool, which is looking at how our number of staffing, the dispatch, and population, and how it all goes together. Next slide, please.
So in this slide, a little bit confusing, but on the right, the green, yellow, orange, red, that's to show you the calls for service that we get by the hour, and that's over the course of a year. So starting in 2017 to 2022. And then on the left side of that graph, you can see where at the very top it says swing out, days in, graves out, swing in. Those are when our shifts are either reporting to work or going home. So our swing shift, for example, goes home at midnight, and graveyard will have come in at 10 p.m. So they overlap for 2 hours in the evening. Day shift comes in at 7 a.m. and graveyard goes home at 8. Swing shift comes in at 2. And you can see there's a little bit of a method to our madness as to where we put our staffing. We try and put more people where there's going to be a greater number of calls for service. Swing shift has a higher minimum staffing than day shift does, or for nights as well, except nights is the same as swings on Fridays and Saturdays, because we notice an increase on those nights at late night times. So we try to use the data that we collect to focus the officers at the times of day that are most efficient for us. So this shows, if you look back to 2017, if we were to go back even further, and it's more difficult to do because there was a change of CAD systems with dispatch, and it's a little more difficult to go further back, but this shows it well, how you can see that expansion of the number of calls growing to greater times of the day. And then the number of calls, if you look at, say, 2017 versus 2022 by the hour, almost without exception, you have greater numbers every hour of the day. So this is one of those things that we look at very carefully, because we want to make sure that as we continue to build out our staffing, and we do get to the point of building up our minimum staffing, that we're able to effectively address the best times of day to assign these officers. And so that's largely what you're seeing here, is how the calls for service are being responded to by the officers, and our methodology behind when the officers are working the hours of the day.
And before we go to the next slide, I know we've gotten a lot so far, so I want to see if there's any questions that we need to go back to these other slides first before we continue. We're on a roll.
So as I look at this again for another round, you guys, I'm just really curious. I mean, there's a hot zone, right? Like 3 to 4 in the afternoon. And my question is there a particular theme or challenge that happens in the deepest of the red zone?
Well, a couple of things. And so we've looked at that over the years. Some of it is school getting out, and kids maybe not doing things that we would like kids to be doing at that time of day. And then the other is when people are coming home from work. So they maybe that isn't when the crime occurred, or maybe it happened while they were gone to work, or their car got broken into overnight and they're like, I don't have time to deal with this before I go to work. They go to work and they call when they get home. So that's part of what you see there, is you see, we do see an increase in calls that involve juveniles, but then we also notice that part of that is when people are returning home from work, or they've gotten time later in the day to address whatever it might be. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are our hot calls, the priority 1 and 2 calls. We do track that too, but that's way more random. It isn't as focused like late in the day like that.
What we have seen during this transition over the last 5 years, that our priority 1, which is our imminent calls for service, have increased every single year. So again, that is concerning, and things we want to monitor as well, because that tends to call everybody, all hands on deck. The other thing we talk about too is day shift. We don't leave them totally hanging out to dry, even though they're our primary call responders. You do have detectives. Worst case, the commander will go. We have auxiliary reports. We have traffic. We have SROs that'll handle some of this. So we're swing shift. It is there after everybody else goes home. They may be on an island by themselves, and their closest backup is going to be the other swing shift officers in Tualatin, Beaverton, and things of that nature. So again, we're very cognizant about supporting swing shift to make sure they're adequately staffed as well. Next slide, please.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
No. So on the previous slide, I think it would actually be really helpful to understand our numbers, maybe pulling TriMet out and truly understanding what the number of Tigard officers is, because it sort of feels like apples and oranges and not knowing what's in which bucket. I think that would help us tell a better story and understand.
Absolutely. We do have one in our strategic plan where the bars are actually coded that would show, because there was a couple positions that are no longer here before my time, and that almost looked busier. So I think we can get to the essence of what you're asking for, Mayor, and modify that. So thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Any additional questions before we move on? Yeah, Councilor Singh.
Yeah, so you mentioned there were about 22,000 dispatch calls, and I was wondering if you all measure if they're mental health related and have you noticed an increase in that?
Yes, that was one of the first things I noticed when I came here in 2017. Coming from a larger agency where in briefing you were talking more about aggravated assaults, robberies, I noticed a theme of a lot of same names and concerns and challenges that patrol was dealing with, and wanted a way to capture it that I think we see more and more agencies trying to do. So I always say, first and foremost, we don't diagnose anybody, but we put it under the umbrella of behavioral health incidents. And if they're either by self-disclosure, a loved one, or something that is obvious to the officer, we ask them to track it on a CAD call or in a police report. And it can be they're exhibiting some mental health issues. It could be a substance use disorder, or they're unhoused, or it could be all three in combination. So generally, when we report out to you, we show that about 67% of our calls for service in the societal, so that's your disorderly conduct, trespass, things of that nature, have that component in it. And yes, we have seen an increase. We've also seen an increase in unknown people that are not familiar, where when I first came here, everybody kind of knew long-term Tigard residents and had a rapport. And now we'll know people that we've never seen before and trying to understand maybe where they're coming from. And then, so I think we're seeing it underreported. So when I give out on the dashboard, which again, 67% seems high, but we know that's underreported. And we also don't try and inflate it. So we'll put it by officer hours, but we only count one officer when we know if somebody might be in an episode. There could be multiple officers, and we don't even count that. So just to try and even give us a snapshot. But it's a great question, and yes, we're seeing that trend with very little resources to be able to help them. Right now our go-to is emergency room, which just is not an appropriate place, and for them and their safety, but also they just kind of come right back out the door. And rarely we try and use the jail system. It's only maybe if they've been assaultive or things of that nature. So definitely very much challenged with tools for our officers to even use as resources. Okay, in this slide, it's a snapshot as we've all come out of COVID, and we're seeing calls for service, not only just in Washington County, but we've seen it across the country. Crime is up in both categories, persons and property. But a snapshot that I wanted to show you is concerning is Tigard was the highest increase for Washington County cities at 5%. So that 1,000 more calls for service, that's the most for us. Tualatin, so a smaller agency right next to us, is 4%, and Sherwood 3%. So these are your south cities who have the highest increase. And then Beaverton at a 2%, Washington County at a net 0, and then Hillsborough is actually seeing a 2% decrease. And I appreciate Councilor Wolf's question on maybe is Hillsborough or Beaverton doing something unique? Maybe why are they unique? So I've reached out to them, and their calls for service may have been impacted, but their crime has not. And so as I was talking to Chief Coleman from Hillsborough, they've seen double-digit increases in property and persons crime, a significant increase in gang-related violent crimes. And so their calls for service, where they do believe they've seen a decrease, is in 2022, they deployed 4 bike officers. So that was their version of their proactive unit that we kind of talked a little bit about in our budget meeting. And they're dedicated to 2 districts of theirs, and they're kind of their downtown core. And they've seen, and it's just not the officers. They have the Latino outreach. They have their crisis intervention team liaison, and so they've seen 5 to 7% reduction in those 2 areas based on that approach that they're doing. And so they think that is a contributor. Beaverton also has 4 bike officers. They're in their downtown core. They're the first ones that will also address any houselessness issues, but also it's just they're a vibrant place, and so they have 4 officers dedicated to that area. The rest of South Cities do not have dedicated proactive. It's in between calls and your free time. And what else did I want? So again, everybody's seen an increase. Tualatin told me that they've seen an increase in their property crimes of 39%, where we're about 26, where we thought we were high. They've also seen an increase in their priority 1 and 2 calls as well, so immediate and imminent. And of course, usually with that comes then your decrease in self-initiated, your ability to proactively work the problem areas. Sherwood had just stated that they've had their property crime has skyrocketed. They didn't have a number, but it's skyrocketed. And they said especially in their retail theft. And they also attribute that they were operating with 4 vacancies pretty much all of 2022. And I touched on Beaverton and Hillsborough, and so at that point, one thing I did note, Hillsborough, it's the first time in their annual report where they track the numbers, but their crisis intervention team, they have 2 officers dedicated, and they handled 2,100 calls for service. It's worth for me peeling back. It's a new stat, and it's separate from the mental health response calls, so it's something that I don't have a lot to tell you about tonight, but that was something that they did note in their annual report. Any questions on this information before we go on? Okay. Next slide, please.
So on this, immediately after after the voters passed the levy in 2020, we went to work on the hiring of the officers, hiring of all the positions for this. And one of the challenges that we have is one that is not unique to Tigard. This is a challenge all across the country, and not just in law enforcement. Industries across the economic sector are finding a hard time finding qualified people to come to work for them. There are many theories as to what this might be, but law enforcement has seen some significant challenges. And for example, we used to get maybe 400 people that would come in for a testing when we had a couple of positions open. We have a hard time today filling 1 day of interviews for 8 people. That's how few applicants we're getting compared to what it used to be, say, 20 some years ago. It was not unusual to get 400 applicants for a couple of positions, and then the agency had their pick of the best applicants. Now we face a challenge where the applicant has maybe 5 agencies that they've applied to. They might be in backgrounds with 4 of those 5 agencies, us being one of them, and they get to choose. It isn't us getting to choose anymore, it's the applicant. And when you get a high quality applicant, we have to be able to move quickly. So currently, we still have 5 patrol officer or police officer vacancies. And part of that is due to attrition. I mean, all of it's due to attrition. We've had some retirements, people that have gone to other agencies, and then some people that have just plain left the profession. The last few years has been very challenging for law enforcement. And so despite that initial success, we're seeing a challenge in that hiring. And what we noticed, and I look back at some statistics over the last few years, about 6.5% of the people who apply actually come to work for us. We pulled the numbers and actually looked at it, and that's actually pretty high. And one of the things that we made a decision as a department was that we weren't going to lower our standard in who we hired, because we felt that we owe it to the community to keep that standard high. And so it may mean that officers end up working additional shifts to cover to make sure we meet that minimum staffing. But that important part is that we have not lowered our hiring standard. And we work closely with the union to let them know that, hey, we don't intend to lower the standards, which I think they appreciate as well. And we owe it to the community. They've put their faith in us that we're going to provide the best people we can to serve this community, and we continue to do that with the people that we hire. Even though it's challenging to get the right people. We're committed to getting the right people. So those are some of the challenges that we currently face in hiring.
Now we're getting into the real challenges, where we are today, and we're going to tag team this. So some of the others you've heard about, obviously, is increase in mental health crisis and the complexity of calls. We've obviously heard a lot and painfully experienced. Take our time, slow it down. It may take you hours, and that ties up resources. And so we do that. It may take a little bit to get a mental health response team to a call. Luckily, with having the South Cities, that delay is much shorter. But as those calls increase, yet the demand comes for that team as well. So again, Commander McDonald just shared a traffic stop this morning and the resources it took. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had one of our officers saw a car that had a passenger in it that he said, "Oh, I know that person has a warrant," and so he was able to get in to stop that vehicle. But he also knows that this person is known to be armed with a firearm routinely, and so rather than making a traffic stop and trying to do it solo, he called in additional resources, and so it took every officer we had, and myself included. I went out and actually assisted with a high-risk stop because there were 3 people in the vehicle. And we didn't know if all 3 of them had warrants or if they had had some other criminal activity, but it took time, it took resources, it allowed additional calls to stack up and wait to be serviced. And we went out, did it safely, were able to arrest the person, take them to jail for their warrant, and then the other 2 people were released because they didn't have any other issues. But we had 7 officers there at one point to deal with the issue, 3 of whom were supervisors, because we wanted to make sure that we had the right resources to do it right. And fortunately, during the day, we have that. If it may need to include me, which I don't leave the office all that often, but when I do, it's generally for something more along those lines. If it's evening time, like right now, we have 4 officers and a sergeant currently working. They wouldn't have that resource as we speak to be able to do it the same way we did it earlier today. Then I talked a little bit about the challenges with recruitment and retention. And one of the things that we've been doing to try and combat that is to cast our net wider. And so we have several officers, actually 12 officers, that have volunteered to be a part of that recruiting team. And we go to colleges and universities, to job fairs that they're doing, and that gives us an opportunity to contact a lot of people that either may be interested in law enforcement or haven't maybe given it a thought about what the next step in their life might be. And what we're finding is that, and I hope that none of our competitor agencies are listening tonight, is we're finding that we're actually kind of innovative in this thought process. And we're getting a lot of young people who are commenting to the recruiters, I haven't really thought about a career as a police officer. And so we're starting to see some feedback like that. The other thing that we've found that is that's really important is that it's giving us a more diverse pool of applicants as well. One thing we know from just looking at our higher education institutions is they've done a good job of recruiting diverse students. So in turn, that's allowing us to have a broader depth when it comes to the recruiting of police officers for Tigard. And we do try to focus on wanting people that want to work in Tigard, but at the same time, we've decided that casting our net a little wider could bring someone here for some of the amenities that Tigard has to offer as a community as well.
And we've opened ourselves up to an internship. When we reached out to say, hey, are you thinking about Tigard or policing? And they said, hey, are you doing an internship? I'm in my 4th year criminal justice major. So we're doing that. We figured out a way. 6-foot center playing basketball in Warner Pacific, and what I can do to keep her interested, and she is so far, but she's also helping us in our community academy, does ride-alongs, and so that's been fun. And the other thing we are also doing is how can we make, so we see a percentage that drop off in our oral board process. And so now we're looking at, maybe we'll host how to prepare for an oral board. Because again, we want to be successful. We don't want them to practice on us, learn from that if we're their first one, and then go to another agency and be successful. So looking at ways to, again, it just takes time commitment to be able to grow and develop our numbers. Again, we touched on city growth and calls for service. That is a reality. I don't think I need to go over the numbers. But again, just as we become denser, it's just intuitive that some calls for service. And when I talk about the one district, you know, the fields, we averaged in 2021 361 calls. But then what we tried to do is analyze what those calls were. And then when Maddie came on as our community engagement coordinator, I asked her to meet with the manager. We were able to talk about some of the issues they were seeing, mitigate that. We hosted a chat with the chief there, and it went down 299, and I think we're still seeing it go down. So again, it's not all about just sending officers to these calls, but really looking at the problems. And some of the other denser apartments are, you know, averaging about 151 calls for service, so we kind of keep a track on that. What we don't know, as I shift on to increased houselessness, as Councilor Singh had asked, what are we seeing there with mental health and houselessness? What we try and address is criminal activity or behavior, and it's calls for service when a community member or business is calling us. It's not anything that we try and proactively go out and seek, other than if we want to do welfare checks to make sure they're okay. But things we'll see is maybe unwanted in a business. They're knocking over things, or maybe unfortunately they're defecating in a business, or they're in an episode and they'll come and call us. We may do a trespass or just ask them to leave. We've seen those calls definitely increase. And so what I don't know, as I sit before you, as we in later presentations talk about time, place, and manner, what the impact will be, because it will certainly probably start with us until we can think about who else may be able to assist us in that. So we're just putting that as a placeholder. That's an unknown at this point. You got the next one.
I think it's important to note that a number of years back, the detox facility that was available for us or any agency in Washington County became unavailable. It closed. It was in Portland. And this is important because oftentimes our officers are out and they're trying to address a challenge with someone that's intoxicated, whether it's under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Having contact with the police isn't necessarily the most appropriate thing for them to be having at that point in time. They need to have a place where they can recover from that challenge, and there were places available like that. That isn't currently available to us. So the options that we have are try to find someone that can take care of them, which oftentimes these are folks that are houseless, or they don't have someone that feels safe taking this person on, or they go to the hospital. The hospital isn't necessarily set up for that either. And the hospital is, an emergency room isn't the best place to take someone who's intoxicated. It isn't the best place to take someone who's suffering from a mental health crisis often either, because much of the time when you're talking about that type of situation, the officer that is working with the person has more training in behavioral health than the ER doctor does that they're working with. And so it's a very challenging situation for us to address when you don't have facilities that are available even for the officers to be able to address some of these societal issues that are really challenging, that our community members are saying, we want something done about this. And it might be that they're asking the city to address that. And oftentimes the people that it falls to is the police department. And partially because we've, at least historically and traditionally, been the ones that have dealt with that, even though we recognize and have long recognized that police may not be the best to address those. But we have the infrastructure in place to be able to send people to be able to do that. It's just that some of the infrastructure that was there for us to be assisted with no longer exists.
And the other is just the impacts we're seeing with some of the legislative changes. And I'm not here to be on a soapbox, but there are some realities. And I think I've talked to the majority of you. I have no problems with going from one and taking something out of a criminal element and putting it in a more social service. Where I see it happens, good intentions, sometimes bad outcomes, is when you don't create that bridge till the service is created. And I say that with ballot measure 110, when you immediately decriminalize drugs, and that's your hardcore, so your fentanyl, your meth, your cocaine, and the facilities aren't there to take them in when they're ready, then we see it on the streets, and we have to navigate that. And again, we're using our ambulances, we're using our emergency rooms, and that's not inappropriate. You've heard me say in the dashboard presentations, almost everybody that we come across in our shoplifting, our thefts, all have fentanyl on them. And so what is the answer? First of all, we can't wait till there's some services to provide them to help with that. But in the meantime, then we're dealing with it 24/7 in our community. And same with some of the other police reforms that take some of our tools away. It's in that accountability. Bail reform, we've seen the difference in that, where again, more people are out in the community with the ability to re-offend. So those are the ones we see. And so those are just our challenges that I'll touch base on. And then I'll let you hit the last one.
One of the things, I mentioned the closure of the detox facilities, and by law, technically, the sheriff is required to take someone to detox them, but that's at the jail. Yet another place that's not appropriate. And when we talk about issues like jail overcrowding and early releases, if we take someone to the jail for a detox because they're drunk, let's say, that takes up the space for someone who may have actually committed a crime that actually should be in jail. And so I know that you're all acutely aware of the budgetary challenges that Washington County has. That impacts the jail and the operation of the jail as well. They have staffing challenges just like we do in being able to staff their jail, so they have jail pods that are closed. So they have overcrowding, which causes early releases, which makes us have to make some decisions when we are encountering people that are committing criminal activity as to whether or not we're even going to make an attempt to take them to jail. So we try and evaluate those as we can on the street to make a decision as to whether or not someone should be going to jail. Whereas it used to be that when someone got arrested in Tigard, we would very routinely be taking someone to the jail, because with the booking process, there's a level of accountability. They may get released very soon, but there's a level of accountability and there's a level of commitment to making sure that they're being entered into the court process properly. We're seeing today, and this is a result of the pandemic, we're seeing tons of people with arrest warrants. And many of those are for fail to appear, meaning that they were cited for a crime instead of being taken to jail, and they failed to appear for their court appointment. So now there's a warrant for their arrest. And we see those on a very routine basis. And so those people often are being taken to jail because of the fact that they haven't followed through with their commitment with the court. And so these are some of the challenges that we continue to face. And these aren't unique to Tigard, right? This is something that we're seeing that every agency in Washington County is having to encounter when we're talking about dealing with some of these challenges currently out on the street.
So on that positive note, we're going to close with just one more snapshot, and again, where are we trending here? And this is where it rings a bell for me and concerning. So in particular, the violent crimes, and again, you've heard me say, we already have 2 this year, homicides. So we've had a total of 10 from 2020 to 2023 already, where between 2017, 18, and 19, we only had 1. Our robberies are doubled. Our assaults have increased by 100. So those are our violent crimes. they're not being committed by Tigard residents. Maybe at us, but they are not. When we look at who's committing crimes, just in 2022, we were trying to pull that data. 441 had a Tigard resident of the ones we arrested. 1,400 more are either outside of Tigard or they didn't give an address. So they could be a Tigard resident, they could be unhoused, they could be transitory. And we're trying to peel that back a little bit. But we're the wrong kind of destination for people to take advantage of us in this community. And again, whether we've seen these increases across the county, the state, and the country, are they seeing the same type of perpetrators, meaning outside coming into their, I don't know to that level. But again, we landed in the end of 2022 with a 34% increase in crimes against person and a 26% increase in crimes against property. So, when we talk about visibility as a deterrent, the ability to respond, the ability to give people a sense of safety, sometimes that comes from visible presence, being in their neighborhood just a little bit more frequently. That's just one of many things that we're trying to do with this levy, is just to keep up with the pace so that we are not just reactive, we are just not being roving secretaries, taking a report and never being able to address the problem. And so with that, I'm just going to say happy to answer any of the questions before to get to where we are when we want to meet on May 16th. What other information do you need that perhaps we didn't present today? Anything else you'd like to know, clarify? Happy to do so at this time.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Excuse me. You'd mentioned the closure of detox facilities across the metro area. Was that a symptom of COVID, or was that something that systematic is happening over time due to budgetary reasons? And do you see if there was a way to bring some of those back, would it be helpful? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that particular example wasn't a result of COVID. That was something that occurred pre-COVID. And it was a nonprofit that ran it and then contracted through the city of Portland, and then agencies from around the metro area had the opportunity to be able to take a number of people. And Tigard had an allotted number per month that we paid in a contract. The nonprofit decided that it just wasn't something that they wanted to operate anymore. And they gave notice like a year and a half in advance. And so it first started with outside metro agencies not being able to use it, and then Portland was able to still use it for a period of time because it was a nonprofit based in Portland. And then they ultimately ended the service there as well. So it wasn't a symptom of it. And would it help to have something in Washington County? Yes, absolutely it would.
But there is a bright spot. There is. Coming to a county near us is, if you're tracking Washington County Center for Addiction Treatment and Triage, I think is the CAT. And I've been fortunate enough to sit on the steering committee. Unfortunately, that was not a one campus, one-stop shop. They had to split it into two campuses. I think one technically in Beaverton, one in Hillsborough. But a portion of that will have a detox. It'll have a place for first responders to drop off, and they're going to have their service providers. I think the Hawthorne House will be over there. So it's very exciting. We're still looking at the end of '24 for one of the buildings, and the other a little bit later because they've taken over the WACA Dispatch Center now that they've moved out. And so I think that's going to be 2025. So we're still a little ways, just like sheltering and everything else. It's coming, so we're just living through the pain of another year and a half to 2 years on not having the adequate resources that we do need, but it is coming.
Council President Hu.
Thank you for addressing the recruitment issue, thinking outside the box, and for recruiting universities. And so I have two questions. First one is, are we doing more outreach at even younger age. Our school board member guest left, but are we doing that kind of outreach at a younger age than college?
We are, yes. So we actually have a very robust cadet program that starts at age 15. And we have students from Tigard, Tualatin. I don't think we currently have a Beaverton student, but we have in the past. It's been a very effective recruiting tool for us. We have several officers that started as cadets that are now officers for us. So have been around the police department for many years now. In fact, I think one of our officers who started as a cadet has been an officer now for about 7 years. So it is a very effective recruiting tool for us. The unfortunate reality is it's a good recruiting tool for other agencies as well, because we have lost some of our cadets to other agencies who they've, rightfully so, they've decided that maybe another community was a better fit for themselves, but they did get their roots and their start here. So we do work on that, and we're constantly looking for those opportunities to engage younger people. And at one time, we had more female cadets than we did male cadets, and of those, most of them were people of color as well. And now we don't know whether or not yet they're going to get into law enforcement because they're of that college age, and most of them are still in college, so they haven't really made career decisions yet. And the great thing is our cadet advisors stay in contact with these young people, and it's partially because they've grown to have a great deal of care for these kids, and then part of it is because they also would love to see them come and work here with them and be their peers.
I really appreciate you mentioned diversity at least twice, because I would think it would be easier to recruit more diverse community member when the younger generation can actually see people who look like them serving in the police department. So another question is, seems like recruitment is a challenge, so you don't have to answer this now, but maybe there are creative way to have this bond levy to help with recruitment. I don't know if it's already there, but maybe there are ways for the levy to be structured so it will also help recruitment. If you can think of a way, that will be helpful as well. So.
And it requires time and energy. So when you're at minimal staffing, then to unplug somebody to go to an all-day event is challenging, and we would really like to have our officers be the face of the organization. I also know that we're doing a very professional, robust recruitment video that we've just identified a recording agency that's going to help us. So it's always been about branding for us and humanizing the badge. So we're continuing down that road. I'm going to show my bias. I thought outside the box. It's something I want to do in my previous agency and never did. And so finally, with Commander's help, I'm an athlete. I came from an athletic background. I didn't know I wanted to be a cop until I was recruited after my sporting time. And so I sent letters to all athletic directors and said, hey, can you give them to the coaches? Because your sport groups are very, very diverse. But they all have in common is discipline, drive, and desire, and they know how to work together. And so that's how we got a couple of our Warner Pacific basketball players, and we'll continue to try and ask them to do more. But that was another way of just saying, hey, athletic directors, can you give these to coaches? Can you give them to your players? And sure enough, we did at least get a few calls. So, yeah.
Actually, to piggyback on that, Chief, I think I've been keeping track, I think we've had 11 responses back. 10 of those are women. So interested in law enforcement. And so we've connected them with recruiters that we have, like I said, the 12 officers that we have that help us focus on recruiting. And rather than talking to me, because I can go rah and tell them all of that, they don't talk to me. I connect them with one of our officers. They can arrange a ride-along so the person can come and do a ride-along. So it is kind of out of that idea that the chief had. We've heard from 11 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge right now in the recruiting realm, and 10 of those women. So that's a huge win. Now, we'll see if any of those convert into new officers, and we'll be able to report back and let you know that for sure. That would be really exciting if that happened.
Try not to give away too many of our trade
I know.
secrets.
No, right?
I mean, maybe whisper it to us if we can. Councillor Wolf.
Actually, that popped a different question or another question into my head. You know, the education model is very different, right? Because you have a large staff of classified, but the state and universities have partnered quite a lot to incentivize grow your own programs. And I just think, is there a way to capitalize within our own community, but also incentivize the supports, right? That might be through a community college program or for something, but it's still kind of like the cadet, but to have the financial support to get through that tuition program. So that's a rambling thought. But this also speaks a little bit to Council President Hu's question. And Shelby, I was going to look to you about the structure of the levy. And I was assuming that as we go out for a renewal, that the format would typically, would it be the same? So it's the officers, the SRO, and the de-escalation training.
So in order to be a renewal, it has to be substantially similar to the original. So it has to be the exact same amount and substantially similar services. So we have a little tiny bit of wiggle room as to what is substantially similar. So we've talked about if there was a group of targeted officers in the first levy, if we reallocated them on assignments, but they're the same, they're still patrol officers, is that substantially similar? Probably so. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but essentially, no. I mean, the purpose of a renewal is to renew, right?
So thank you for that. So that kind of sets the foundation for, Chief, you had asked what are our requests of next steps. So I think you all know I'm 100% in. I'll do whatever needs to be done to campaign advocate. So, but what I think about in what was passed as part of the levy, what should we all know about the de-escalate training? What should we know to support SROs? I mean, I certainly was all in as a board member supporting that, but as we became more educated and talked specifically about the renewal of the levy, it's the components that we will be asking our community to renew
Absolutely.
That we need to get really sharp on, I think.
And there's a couple things. First of all, very exciting news, since I have the mic. We have 6. We started out, I think, 4. We ended up getting 6 in the de-escalation training this week. So 6 more, all assigned to patrol. Talked to one officer who's got 6 years on and said, what do you think? You know, is that helpful? Is it giving you tools in your toolbox? He said, absolutely. Most I hear is, I didn't know all of what like the Hawthorne House could do. So just even when you partner with your service providers, you're better able to then out in the field talk about the resources a little deeper than just handing somebody a card and saying, you know, here, good luck. You can talk, you know faces, you can connect. And that's something that we didn't know going into this. We were looking for tools and their skill set, but that partnership is invaluable. I would also be remiss if I did not at least say very surfacey, because, you know, because it is an employee market, as you know, facilities and competitive wages. Now, we're in negotiations, so I won't say anything more. But you've heard me say it. It is because I've had people say thank you, but no thank you because of X, Y, and Z from another agency within Washington County. So we're just at that level that, and I know you guys know it, and I do appreciate it. But that is part of when we come full evolution. That those are critical pieces when we need them. Is where I'll be looking for your support as well.
Youth Councillor Nog, do you have any questions?
I don't have anything in particular. My one question was, I think more regarding SROs, just to see how many, since when like looking at the numbers of like phone calls, there were a lot after school. So like how could SROs be more involved in order to like decrease any like on-campus conflicts? Because I know in Tigard High, there has been a recent uptick in fights, which is so interesting. So I was wondering, like, what are some like SRO recommendations to both the district as well as like keeping the school environment and like kind of the area around school environment after school safer?
Well, luckily you have SRO Nick Nunn, who's sitting in the audience, but I think I can answer this one. Is great partnership, and so again, when the community came together and said, yes, we want our SROs, and this is what it's going to look like, they really delved into the partnership of that collaboration. And so when something spills over after school, Nick's not going home. You know, he's going to carry it. When you have a Safe Oregon call, Nick is dealing with that potential threat or unknown threat, or is it a credible threat? He's working that extra hours to do that. And then, of course, all the events that they're part of to try and help mitigate that as well are just some of the few things. And then when they, even on the summertime, when they go back out on the street, they and our youth are bored and out and about, they're going to know who to contact and have built those rapport. So those are just some of the ways that they stay engaged and try to help either keep it and handle it in school, or at least manage it right after school. And the one thing I did not say, I meant to say, and I apologize because this was before your guys' time, but as I first came on and we were looking at the data and knowing that we were short-staffed, if you recall, the Matrix company did come in and look at the entire city functions to include the police department. And so in 2019, I'll recall their police report where they looked at the calls for service, all of the time allocation, and they recommended the 8 officers and 1 SRO. So that was a nice confirmation to have an independent entity that kind of pulls that data and support what we believed was what we needed as well.
Thank you. I think you've told us a good story and a lot of information on sort of our current situation and how we got here. I think looking forward to next steps, there's kind of some fundamental questions that I would be looking for guidance on. You know, I think we're trying to solve some of those recruitment issues. We're all in on a council goal of modernizing our facilities and working as hard as we can to find a solution that includes a police facility. But I think our fundamental question is, I think absolutely, yes, we need a continuation of some sort of levy of support. And the question is it a renewal, or is the actual right answer for our police department something different? And I think that's a fundamental question we need to have an answer to, and to be part of the discussion and to know how you landed upon whatever recommendation you're making. Because, you know, as we look forward to the next 5 years, it's been a very challenging 5 years, and maybe the answer for our community is something different, and we need to be able to know if that's the case. And certainly I think, you know, missing 5 officers, that would make a huge impact. And looking at the reality of hopefully we can get fully staffed. What does that look like? What does that feel like for you? Is that the right answer? I think would be helpful information to know moving forward as we continue to work on what we can to help you with recruitment and as many different things and tools in the toolbox as possible.
And which brings up a great point when we talk about it's just not about Tigard and the system as a whole. And so we've heard it when we ask for advocacy or support when you're talking about whatever Sheriff Garrett talks about the jail. Will Washington County need some support? Because it does have a direct correlation. The DPSST Police Academy, we are currently 5 to 6 months behind. They have presented now a model that would run a swing shift, but they need teachers, and they used to count on about 150 agency loans, but with everybody short staffed, they aren't giving up those trainers. And so they're looking to the governor for additional resources. So that advocacy is incredibly important. That model will keep us at the 5 to 6 months, and not, if they don't do that model, then in a year from now it could be, and the vacancies keep growing, it'll be a year to a year and a half while we're sitting paying people before they get to the academy. And so it's very real. We've had, I've been part of the Metro group to think about how we can do things different, bring a Metro Academy. It's not feasible, it's not replicable, so now we're supporting DPSST. But You know, Chief Lavelle has 75 officers he's sitting on that is filing records and whatnot till he's waiting for them to get in the academy. So that's a real problem for us. And so your voices to our representative is also very helpful. So it's a bigger issue and multi-layered, but I always appreciate when you ask me, and the opportunity to advocate on our behalf is very much appreciated.
Do y'all feel like you have guidance that you need to come back? Okay. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
We don't have any non-agenda items tonight, so the next item on our agenda is an administrative report with City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors, my teammates, and community members. One on the discussion we just had, that was great. We do have the information we need, and we'll come back on May 16th. So just a few quick updates for you. It is National Water Week, National Library Week, and today is National Library Workers Day. So a lot of weeks and days happening right now, but kudos to all of our teammates, both the library and public works departments, for their efforts day in and day out. And so it's always nice to recognize our teammates when it's a national celebration. Because it's Water Week, we're continuing to focus on educating our community, make them aware of our partnership with the Regional Water Providers Consortium. We're focusing this week on advocating for safe, sustainable, reliable, and affordable drinking water here and across the country, which you know is critical. For National Library Week, the theme is There's More to the Story. And our team has worked on a nice display if you're at the library, just looking at different ways of engaging with our library, having fun while you're at the library as well. When we were all sitting here on Saturday, I know Sue was working and a few other teammates, Kelsey, Maddie, a few others, for our drug take back. And I mentioned some of the preliminary numbers. We have the exact numbers now, so we did have 148 cars or vehicles come through, filled up 16 boxes worth of unneeded or expired medication, and that totaled 322.44 pounds. So we measured it right to the perfect there. So 322.44 pounds. So you saw it in action that day. I just wanted to close the loop on that. So thanks to Sue and others that participated in that on their Saturday to just one more way of keeping our community safe and giving them an outlet. Kudos to our Public Works Department. We're going to be hosting 30 8th graders this Thursday from Fowler Middle School, and they'll just be getting an overview of Public Works, from engineering, streets, parks and recreation. So some of the questions you asked about police, same type of thing, just a way to introduce 8th graders just to their community, but who knows, you might get people that are interested in someday wanting to work for the city of Tigard or another municipality. So thanks to Public Works for doing that. We mentioned, or you approved some contracts for Cook Park. We are now focusing on closing the park on June 1st. And so we will start the awareness campaign, education, so the community is aware when that current structure will be taken out, and then the planning for all the work that has to be done, and then the reopening of it later this year. So more to come on the details of the schedule, but June 1st is where we're targeting right now if you are having conversations with community members or get asked for Cook Park. The community survey is the first wave of mailers went out this week. So we're excited for that. So we'll be getting some information on that, on the community survey. Nicole is the lead. Thanks for working with Kathy and others. We also next week are planning some social media posts, news alerts on our website, just to make people aware of it, that there is an actual survey that is out there. It's not something that others are trying to do, but the city is trying to understand how they really rate our services and if we're achieving some of the things that we have in our community promise. Downtown Reimagined, we've talked a lot about downtown. We're going to come to you in June with an update on some of the TIF conversations we had, what's the vision. We also have a project, as you know, called Downtown Reimagined going on, and so we're inviting the community in tomorrow night at the library from 6 to 8 p.m. to understand what the community wants for the downtown, from transportation, height of buildings, it's all the different aspects of a downtown that'll help influence the ultimate reports that we have later on. But that's just one more opportunity for the community to be involved. We'll obviously bring you up to speed as well on Downtown Reimagined, all the different conversations we have. And then we always like to close if we have a great quote, and we got another one from a community member that says we're just continuing to our commitment to great service one of our 5 E's. Last night we learned there's a 6th E. So with the 5 E for excellence, 2 new 5-star Google reviews received last week that said the staff or team members are friendly, plenty of space in the library to read and get work done. The staff is very helpful. So with that, I conclude my remarks and just say thanks to all of you for a good meeting, and thanks to our library team for continuing to provide great service.
Thank you so much. I didn't know we got Google reviews. There's no executive session tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
The motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.